Hey everybody, this is JDGaming, back today with a deck profile of Blue Eyes. Now, whereas this is a new theme for the channel, I think there was quite a natural progression that led me to this deck today over the last few months. I did a Danger Dark World profile, which featured a rank 8 package that of course Blue Eyes is very well known to be able to take advantage of, and recently I did Dark Magicians as kind of a nostalgia trip that I experimented with during the Banless Blues lull period earlier this year, as we were kind of leaving Master Rule 4 and entering the current format we're in now. Back then, it was my first time playing around with the Blue Eyes theme, and it just didn't quite click with me because I had to use all my resources to go to Link Monsters first, and that just didn't really resemble the Blue Eyes that I remembered from 2016. However, now that we're finally able to summon our signature fusions, synchros, and Xyz monsters to our main monster zones, the deck resembles a lot more of its glory days, and we even got some new tools to play around with since it was the deck to beat back in 2016. So this is going to be a let's build. As always, I'll explain my reasonings and the choices that I have in here from the ground up, so you can hopefully even see how this deck is played if you've never seen the deck before and want to give it a try yourself. If you just want to see an updated version of the deck for 2020, you can head on over to the description box down below, where the timestamp in the table of contents will take you to the A to Z alphabetical profile that you're probably used to. And of course, thanks to YouTube's new chapter system, you can go ahead and watch this video in parts instead of sitting through the whole thing, because it tends to be kind of a lot unless you're wanting to watch half an hour of Yu-Gi-Oh! So without further ado, let's build Blue Eyes White Dragon. The first step in building any deck is to establish the theme and to build a core that supports the theme's goals, and of course anyone familiar with the classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Series remembers that Blue Eyes White Dragon is a mighty level 8 monster with an awesome 3000 attack, 2500 defense, and that's kind of where it stops, right? Because it's a vanilla monster, doesn't have an effect or anything. We're not really tribute summoning this guy as we would have on the playground, so we're playing 3 copies of this because we want to have ample access to the card, but don't necessarily want to see it too much beyond the 1 copy. And to really get the deck started in the modern age, we're playing 3 copies of the Melody of Awakening Dragon. This is a normal spell card that says discard 1 card, add up to 2 dragon monsters with 3000 or more attack and 2500 or less defense from your deck to your hand, which means you can get a copy of your Blue Eyes White Dragon in addition to the more important Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon. Now this thing has the same stat line as Blue Eyes White Dragon, but it actually has an ability, one that's really useful. So cannot be normal summoned or set, must first be special summoned from your hand with its effect of revealing Blue Eyes White Dragon in your hand, and you can only special summon Alternative Dragon once per turn this way. However, you can revive it from your graveyard after that an unlimited number of times, which is really cool and comes up a lot because this card's name is treated as Blue Eyes White Dragon while on the field or in the graveyard. Then as a bonus, once per turn you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, give up this card's attack while it's on the field that turn, and if you do, destroy that opponent's monster, which is a nice bonus effect when you're able to go and then turn it into a free Synchro, Xyz, or Link play, and then maybe if you revive it again from your graveyard, you can pop yet another card. So nice added effect. We play 3 copies of this and the Melody of Awakening Dragon in order to see it as often as possible, and to really maximize on the consistency, I like playing 3 copies of Bingo Machine Go, which is a relatively new normal spell card that says reveal 3 cards from your deck that meets one of these criteria, either is a Blue Eyes monster, or is a spell or trap that specifically lists the original Blue Eyes White Dragon or Ultimate Dragon, except another copy of Bingo Machine Go. Your opponent's forced to randomly choose one to add to your hand without seeing what it is, and you shuffle the rest back into your deck, and you can only activate 1 Bingo Machine Go per turn. This thing's really interesting in that it allows you to tech a lot of different cards for the strategy, but the main reason I love playing this is because now with this card at 3, Melody at 3, and Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon at 3, you have a good chance of seeing both an Alternative White Dragon and the original Blue Eyes in order to resolve that free special summon effect each game that you play, which is what this whole deck is about. Now that we've hopefully established a Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon on the board, we want to make sure we can make the most of it. And whereas a lot of people from 2016, when Blue Eyes was really at its prime, may be thinking of the level 1 spellcasters and dragon tuner monsters next, I want to talk a little bit more about some other big special summon monsters we can add to the theme in order to really get the consistency up. Starting off with at least one copy of 𝗮𝖊𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖊𝖓𝖓𝖐. This is a dark level 8 dragon monster with 3000 attack and 0 defense, which is less than 2500, meaning it's a free target we can search in addition to our Blue Eyes monster for our Melody of Awakening dragon. We don't need any further investment into what we've already added to the deck in order to grab our one copy of this. You can special summon it from your hand by banishing 3 monsters in your graveyard that are either light or dark, and then activate its effect on summon that resolves differently depending on what you banish. If you only banish light monsters, as is often the case in this deck, you could special summon a monster from your graveyard in defense position without even targeting, which is a good way to reuse your alternative white dragon's removal effect before you go and use these 2 monsters for a rank 8 play. If you use a mix of both light and dark monsters, you could destroy up to 2 cards on the field without targeting, and in the rare instance where you actually banish 3 dark monsters in this deck, force your opponent to shuffle one of their cards in their hand back into their deck at random, which is a nifty trick as well. All those effects can only be used hard once per turn. You can't use more than one of those abilities per turn, but realistically, you could special summon more than one Levianeer as long as you're able to get the additional monsters engraved, so feel free to play with 2 or even 3 copies if you really want. I just stuck with the 1 because I figured it adds a lot to the strategy based on the melody we're already playing without disturbing the rest of the balance and forcing me to throw a bunch of light and dark monsters into the graveyard as we may for a chaos deck. Next up, we have 3 copies of 𝕮𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖊𝖓𝖐, the Serpentron Sky Slasher, which is a very powerful dark level 8 machine monster with 2450 attack and defense. If this card is in your hand or graveyard, you can activate its quick effect to banish 8 cards from the top of your deck face down for cost and special summon this card. Then in a different turn from one where you've just used that effect to revive it or summon it from hand, you can banish 3 cards of your choice from your extra deck face down, then target one face-up monster on the field and destroy it. Again, each of these effects is a hard once per turn, and you can't use both of them in the same turn, but this is a really powerful card because now, between this and Levianeer, we can very consistently throw down a second level 8 monster in addition to our Blue Eyes alternative white dragon. Then, because this is a quick effect, if this is in your graveyard during your opponent's turn, you could chump block an attack in the emergency case where your opponent's going to kill you, or better yet, wait until their end phase, pay cost, special summon this guy, and during your turn, you can either use its effect to destroy a monster on the field, or you can use this as material and then bring it right back in the same turn because you won't have used it yet during your turn, just during your opponent's turn, kind of like a scapegoat would when that card was really, really popular. So this is a very flexible answer to a lot of your deck's problems. You need to have enough level 8 monsters in order to do things, and 𝕮𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖙 is that recursive power that the deck really did need, and it becomes unfair when you combine it with cards like Melody of Awakening Dragon, where now the discard cost is free because 𝕮𝖆𝖇𝖑 can come back from grave just like it can come out from the hand, or you can play cards like Tradon, which is a normal spell that says discard a level 8 monster, draw 2 cards. It's effectively Pot of Greed as long as you're able to use something like 𝕮𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖓𝖓𝖐 for that effect, and even if your opponent Ash Blossoms you, the 𝕮𝖆𝖇𝖑 can still come back from the graveyard, ensuring you get something out of that. Obviously, this card's really, really powerful in this deck. It got even more powerful when 𝕮𝖆𝖇𝖑 entered the scene, so definitely want to play 3 copies of it, and then I like playing 3 copies of Return of the Dragon Lords, which is basically Monster Reborn for your own level 7 or 8 dragon monsters, special summons them by targeting, and then if this thing is in the graveyard, you can banish it instead of having one of your dragon monsters die by battle or a card effect, giving an extra layer of protection to any dragon monster you may play, main deck or otherwise. So very powerful having 3 copies of Monster Reborn for the theme. It lets you go and very easily turn an alternative white dragon into a synchro Link or Xyz, and then once it's in the graveyard, you bring it right back, use its effect again, and so on. So you can kind of see the theme with those free special summons. Next, we're going to talk about the rank 8 package because I feel this is the most appropriate time to discuss it. We're starting off with 1 copy of 𝗮𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖐, the Orchist of the Evening Star. This is, believe it or not, a generic rank 8 monster with 2600 attack and 2100 defense, and it has 2 awesome abilities. It can send a card on field to graveyard upon summon without targeting, which is a very powerful form of removal that's relatively difficult to stop, or you can just have it bleed materials instead of having itself or any one of your other cards on the field die, which is a pretty powerful ability as well. So 1 copy of 𝗮𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖐 adds a lot to the strategy. It's just one of the best generic rank 8s we can have. Similarly, we have number 38 Hope Harbinger Dragon Titanic Galaxy, which I feel like I forget one of those words in its long name every time I read it. It is the same kind of dragon as Blue Eyes, same stats attribute and all that. Needs 2 level 8 monsters to make, and once per turn, it can negate your opponent's spell effect or spell card that's activated on the field and attach it to this card as material, and it also has a protection effect that's says you can detach a material when your opponent's trying to attack any of your other monsters, make them attack this card instead, which again, it has 3,000 attack, so it's kind of hard to get over. And then it has a bonus effect where if you're establishing multiple �11𝖊𝖇𝖑𝖊 monsters, you can have one of them absorb the attack of a lost �11𝖊𝖇𝖑𝖊 monster your opponent has successfully killed that turn. Doesn't come up all the time, but it does exist, so definitely pay attention to the fact that it is there on the card. Just don't rely on that all the time. And then to wrap up the �11𝖊𝖇𝖑𝖊 monsters, I like playing the 𝗮𝗄𝐺𝐵𝐈 package, which starts off with this generic rank 8 monster, who says once per turn you can detach a material from this card, then target one face-up monster your opponent controls. Monsters you control except this card cannot attack directly for the rest of the turn, but they can still attack, which is pretty good, and it's turning that monster it stole into 𝗮𝗄𝐺𝐵𝐈 with 3,000 attack and negates its effects, which means you can use it as an attacker, or you can go ahead and turn it into a link monster or other play of your own. This card's mainly in here, however, because it's just the easiest way to access our 𝗮𝗄𝐺𝐵𝐈's full armor Photon Dragon, who has 4,000 attack points and normally would require 3 level 8 monsters, but you could just �11𝖊𝐸 summon it on top of your Cypher Dragon, and then once per turn, you can detach a material from this card to target a face-up card your opponent controls, destroy it, and as if that weren't enough, you can go ahead and overlay that monster and all of its materials into 𝗮𝗄𝐺𝐵𝐈 Cypher Blade Dragon, who normally would require 3 level 9 monsters, and this card says once per turn, you can detach one material from it in order to target one card on the field face-up or face-down and destroy it, which is awesome in tandem with these two effects, potentially stealing a card and then popping a card, and then you could pop another card, and then if this card happens to die, Cypher Blade Dragon is able to revive a Cypher Dragon from your graveyard, which makes this package a lot more cohesive than, say, playing a Tachyon Dragon in this generic 8 spot here. So just a few �11𝖊𝐸𝐹 monsters you could always expand or cut away from this pool if you'd like. For example, these 3 could be replaced with Link monsters if you wanted the combo, but I just feel like it's such a value-oriented package that helps you go second, since you're able to take your normal line of play and turn it into these monsters in sequence. Now that we've talked about the rank 8 package and the free special summons, let's see what else we can do with that, and we're actually going into the tuner monsters here, starting with 3 copies of Sage with Eyes of Blue. This is a light level 1 spellcaster tuner monster with 0 attack, 1500 defense, and a couple really cool effects. If this card is normal summoned, use Stratos for 1 level 1 light tuner from your deck to your hand, except a copy of Sage with Eyes of Blue, which means we can add cards like Effect Veiler from our deck to our hand, because that fits the bill. I realistically like playing 3 copies of Veiler in a lot of these decks anyway, and the fact that Sage can search it means, hey, it's awesome. You synergize with it, even if your opponent knows it's coming, it's still an Effect Veiler they have to play through. Or, if you keep Sage with Eyes of Blue in your hand, you can target one of your effect monsters you already control on the field, discard this card, and if you do, send the targeted monster to the graveyard in order to special summon a Blue Eyes monster from your deck, and that is a hard once per turn. But it's a really interesting ability for this tuner monster. Instead of going for a synchro play, send any one of your effect monsters to summon Dragon Spirit of White, which is a level 8, 2500 attack, 2000 defense dragon monster who's always treated as a Blue Eyes card, meaning it fits the bill for Sage. It's treated as a normal monster while in the hand or in the graveyard, but when it's summoned, normal or special, you can target one spell or trap your opponent controls, banish it, giving you a nice in-deck option to out your opponent's floodgates and other locks they may place on you with something like Union Carrier. Then if this card is on the field and your opponent controls a monster, as a quick effect, you contribute this card to special summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand, which is cool for 2 reasons. One, you can go ahead and attack a monster, then tag into a Blue Eyes and attack another monster with it. Or, if your opponent tries to hit you with like an Effect Veiler on that banish a spell or trap effect, you can dodge, turn into a Blue Eyes, and now this card's no longer on the field to be stopped at resolution of its effect, and that gets around a lot of options that would potentially stop your card from going off. So, very flexible card. Some people like playing 2. In fact, that was kind of the standard back in the day. I just like playing 1 because I figured if I'm going to really need that spell or trap removal, even with Gizmek and such in the deck, I'll just side another copy. I just hated drawing this card, even if it was an easy to summon monster from the grave, and I thought, we'll search it when we need it. We don't necessarily need 2 copies in the strategy, but keep that in mind. People have historically liked playing 2. And some other monsters you can send to the graveyard with Sage or use for your synchro plays would be one of your 3 copies of the White Stone of Ancients, which is just one of the best value cards in the strategy. It's a level 1 light dragon tuner with 600 attack, 500 defense, and 2 powerful abilities. Once per turn during the end phase, if this was sent to the graveyard that turn and is there because of that, you can special summon a Blue Eyes monster from your deck, like your Spirit Dragon or your Blue Eyes White Dragon. Remember that alternative White Dragon does need to be summoned from your hand first, so it's not a target for one of these cards, but as a separate effect, even the same turn it was sent, you can banish this card from your graveyard to target a Blue Eyes monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. That is a hard once per turn ability, but that's a good way to reuse your alternative white dragon, so you can just reveal the same Blue Eyes you've been holding on to, special summon it again. This is a great card you can just normal summon, send to the graveyard with Sage, or potentially even send to the graveyard with something like 𝕿𝖍𝖑𝖊𝗏, who's really in here just because it's a flexible way of sending these cards to the grave in order to activate their effects. And in a similar situation, we will be playing one copy of the White Stone of Legend. This card has a mandatory effect on being sent to the graveyard to add a Blue Eyes White Dragon, which is a straight immediate plus, and sometimes you just want the extra value and variety that this card brings as opposed to only playing the White Stone of Ancients. And now that we've talked about the tuners, I think it's appropriate to talk about our synchros, starting off with 2 copies of Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon. Now, back when I read this card in 2016, I thought, wow, this is very, very tailored towards pendulum summoning now, isn't it? It's a level 9 synchro monster that needs a tuner and 1 or more non-tuner Blue Eyes monsters, has the reverse attack and defense of Blue Eyes, so 3000 defense, 2500 attack, and it has a continuous effect that says neither player can special summon 2 or more monsters at the same time. So I guess you could stop pendulums, but hold on. Can't you stop Link-Cross's tokens with this? Auroradon's tokens with this? Oddly enough, this deck actually is able to use Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon as just an annoying monster that outs a lot of the current combos we see in the metagame today. And as if that weren't enough, it has a bonus once per turn ability that says if a player activates a graveyard effect, you can just negate it. So if your opponent discards a card for Jet Synchron, you just stop it. It's a hard once per turn on Jet Synchron, meaning they can't use it again that turn, and that's able to shut down the same combo that way. So weird how even though it was made for pendulum summoning and generic graveyard stopping in 2016, 4 years ago, it ended up being something that's almost hard countering what you're seeing these days. And that's one of the reasons why I really liked Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon when I've played around with the deck. It just surprised me with how relevant it was today. And then beyond that, it has a third useful ability where if those 2 aren't enough, during either player's turn, you can tribute this synchro summon card to special summon a light dragon type synchro monster from your extra deck in defense position, except a copy of this, and then it's going to be destroyed during the end phase this turn. Except you have to remember that if you have Return of the Dragon Lords in your graveyard, you can just banish that instead, which means some nice synergy there. We play the 2 copies of Spirit Dragon just because you summon this so often, you'll want back-to-back availability in your deck. Now time to talk about the targets that we're tagging into. First off is 𝕮𝖓𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖊𝖓 Silver Dragon. This thing is a monster you could summon on its own. It's a level 9 synchro monster that requires a tuner and a non-tuner normal monster. Same stats as Silver Dragon, where it's reverse of Blue Eyes, and it says if this card is special summoned until the end of the next turn, neither player can target your dragon monsters you currently control with card effects. Also, they cannot be destroyed by card effects. So wouldn't you know, if you Spirit Dragon tag into 𝕮𝖓𝖊𝖓𝖓 here, it can protect itself without Return of the Dragon Lords in the graveyard, and then it goes and protects everything else as well. And then if this card survives until your next standby phase as a result, you could target 1 normal monster in your graveyard, special summon it. That of course can be Blue Eyes White Dragon, or it could be Dragon Spirit of White, which is treated as a Blue Eyes normal monster in your graveyard, and then you get a free spell or trap removal. Really flexible card. Again, you could synchro summon it, but a lot of times you're summoning it off of the Spirit Dragon. Then we have Black Rose Moonlight Dragon, which you're not synchro summoning because it's level 7, but upon special summon of itself or a level 5 or higher monster your opponent plays to their field, you target a special summon monster your opponent controls and bounce it back to the hand. Extra deck monsters, of course, go back to the extra where they might be used again, but this is a layer of disruption that you can have as a quick effect on your Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon, as if that card weren't annoying enough. And finally, Stardust Spark Dragon is a level 8 synchro monster with 2500 attack, 2000 defense. Once per turn, it has the ability to protect itself or one of your other face-up cards that you control so that it can't be destroyed by Spirit Dragon or something else, which is a nice ability. You also have the fact that this is a level 8 monster, so now you can synchro into Spirit Dragon, summon a Spark Dragon during your own turn, Return of the Dragon Lords your level 8 monster, and then turn those into an 𝗍𝗍 monster, which opens up your extra deck to the 𝗍𝗍 plays we talked about in a previous section of the video, using the tuner monsters from this section. So it just ties everything nicely together. Time to wind down and talk about the last few cards in our main and our extra deck. Starting off, we play 1 copy of Monster Reborn, which is effectively a 4th Return of the Dragon Lords. It doesn't have the protection effect, but since you're already playing 3 of those, the flexibility of just summoning any monster from either graveyard is a nice benefit that Monster Reborn has. Then we have Skill Drain, which is an auto win button. You pay 1000 life points, and since you're special summoning 3000 attack monsters every turn, your opponent's probably going to struggle when all their cards are turned off at the same time. Then, this is a flex spot here, but in order to better utilize 𝗮𝗄𝐵, I've played around with 3 copies of the Ultimate Creature of Destruction, and I've kind of liked it, to be honest. It's a normal trap card that says target a Blue Eyes monster you control. This turn, that face-up monster is unaffected by card effects except its own. It cannot be destroyed by battle. Also, any opponent's monster it battles is destroyed at the end of the damage step. That basically makes your Blue Eyes monster invincible. It's able to ward off hand traps, get through monsters it can't kill in battle, automatically kill them, and the fact that this next section mentions Blue Eyes White Dragon means it's searchable off of 𝗮𝗄𝐵, for when this card is in your graveyard and you normal or special summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon, you can set this card but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use that retrieval effect once per turn, but all in all, this is a very interesting way to approach hand traps in this deck, where Effect Veiler is already searchable thanks to your Sage with Eyes of Blue, and now Ultimate Creature of Destruction isn't necessarily a hand trap, but as long as your opponent doesn't have a direct negation for this card, you could potentially play this off of 𝗮𝗄𝐵 and then make your Blue Eyes monster invincible anyway and get through whatever board they've established. Will it work all the time? Not necessarily, but it comes up a lot more often than you'd think because of the fact that it's so searchable. Again, if you want to play something like Ash Blossom or Infinite Impermanence or Nibiru, whatever it may be, this would be the spot to play around with. But in testing, when I played 3 copies of 𝗮𝗄𝐵, I sometimes wanted something else besides Alternative White Dragon and Blue Eyes White Dragon, and this card ended up being surprisingly good. Definitely at least give it a shot. I think you'll be surprised with how interesting the card is for the strategy. And then for the last 2 cards in the main deck, we're playing Jet Synchron, which is just another level 1 tuner. It can come back by discarding one of your free or triggered cards, which is awesome in the strategy. And the fact that this is a machine monster means if you summon it off of your Crystron 𝗏𝗏𝐽𝐵𝑟𝑎x, which is very easy to access in this deck, you're able to go and turn these 2 monsters that are machines into Union Carrier. And of course, when you're playing a deck of all dark monsters and dragon monsters, you're able to easily equip into your Dragon Buster Destruction Sword, turning off your opponent's extra deck. It doesn't really take away too much from the strategy. You're not changing the extra deck away from its Synchro Xyz roots to make a big combo, so this is honestly a nice shoo-in that makes it so that your deck's able to retain its old form and still have an unfair aspect to it that lets you just win games out of nowhere. So definitely consider the Destruction Sword for this deck. Last 2 cards in the extra, Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon, which is the only fusion monster I play, and admittedly the only reason I do is because it needs 2 Blue Eyes White Dragons, which can include Alternative White Dragon, and you don't even have to use Polymerization. You can just contact fuse off of the 2 Blue Eyes White Dragons from your field. Even if I had 3 Blue Eyes in my hand and a free Polymerization, very rarely did I ever feel, oh yeah, I want to go and summon an alternative Ultimate Dragon or something off of it. Realistically, this is in here just because it's effectively a Link monster that needs 2 Blue Eyes White Dragons, but this card cannot be destroyed by battle. It can attack up to 2 monsters during each battle phase, and at the end of the damage step, if it attacked an opponent's monster but that monster is still standing, you could just go and banish it without targeting or destroying it or anything, often getting through your opponent's defenses and preventing graveyard triggers from activating as well. So I've mentioned time and time again that one of my brother's favorite cards is Mekk Knight Crusadia Avermax, and this card just completely outs that card in addition to another Link monster that the opponent may have that's a thorn in my side. So really like the Blue Eyes Twinverse Dragon as just a spicy out that a lot of people forget exists for the theme. And then the last card is Borreload Dragon, which doesn't need too much explanation here, but in this strategy, you summon it oftentimes by stealing your opponent's monster with your Galaxy Eye Cypher Dragon, and then maybe reviving a card like Gizmek. And the fact that this is a dragon monster means you're able to protect it with Return of the Dragon Lords, which is a huge pain because this card's already hard to get rid of, and then the extra layer of anti-destruction that your opponent will often forget is in your graveyard and applies to this card means they're probably going to make mistakes around this card. And with that, our journey to build Blue Eyes has come to an end. Special thanks to anyone who watched the video in its entirety. I know it's a really long one, but hopefully the new chapter functionality that YouTube has implemented has been of some help. Let me know what you think of it down below, because it is relatively new and I kind of want to know what you guys think. Other than that, let's jump right into the main deck here. Starting off with 3 copies of the original Blue Eyes White Dragon, 3 copies of Alternative White Dragon, then a lone copy each of Chaos Dragon Levianir, Dragon Buster Destruction Sword, Dragon Spirit of White, triple Effect Veiler, then we have triple Gizmek Orochi, the Serpentron Sky Slasher, 1 Jet Synchron, triple Sage with Eyes of Blue, triple the White Stone of Ancients, and a single the White Stone of Legend to round out our monsters. Then for our spells, we have triple Bingo Machine Go, we have Monster Reborn Limited here, triple Return of the Dragon Lords, triple the Melody of Awakening Dragon, and triple Trade-In. And then for our traps, we have Skill Drain, and then triple the Ultimate Creature of Destruction to round out a 40-card main deck. For our extra deck, we start off with our single fusion monster in Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon. Then for our synchro monsters, we have Black Rose Moonlight Dragon, Stardust Spark Dragon, and Azure Eye Silver Dragon that we're summoning off of one of our 2 Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon. Then we have for our Xyz monsters, 𝗮𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓, the Orchest of the Evening Star, number 38, Hope Harbinger Dragon Titanic Galaxy, and the Galaxy Eyes Cypher Dragon package consisting of itself, Galaxy Eyes Full Armor Photon Dragon, and Galaxy Eyes Cypher Blade Dragon. Then for Link monsters, we have Link Kuriboh at Link 1, Crystron �11𝗡𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Union Carrier at Link 2, and then Borolo Dragon at Link 4 to round out, of course, a 15-card extra deck. That's it for now, but feel free to grab one of these videos on your way out. If you really enjoyed what you saw today, remember to subscribe to JD Gaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Thanks guys, this is JD Gaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.